FOXD. Handsome gentleman, though.
All right. Well, thank you. Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning, Belly Up Fantasy Live. I am Chase Thornton coming to you as always from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar on this wonderful Sunday morning. This is Dynasty Edition. Duck and AB are not in here today, as you can see. Andrew, I believe, had some family obligations that he's taking care of today, hanging out with his family. And Kevin All Business Wilson, I think, had some business for the family. So he's actually working today. So, but I am here as always, and I am not alone in this quest for fantasy knowledge. As you can see, we have MJ down below, MJ Lefko there. She's joining us for the first time on Belly Up Fantasy Live. And up there in the corner running the board for us today is Jared from the corner booth. Welcome, Jared. How you guys doing this morning?
I'm doing great, man. I haven't done a Sunday show in a while, so it's kind of nice actually, getting it started before I do the rest of my thing. I actually mowed the lawn this morning. I realized, oh crap, I got to do a show in about a half hour. So I got off the lawnmower right inside. It's in literally.
Is that why you're a little sweaty or no? I'm just kidding.
No, that's just the lighting.
That's just the lighting. Yeah. Is it as early for you guys as it is for me? I mean, Jared, obviously you've been awake, but man.
I'm East Coast. I've been up since probably 7. So
7, which would have been like 6 my time, which no, that
and
doesn't happen here.
That's when I fell asleep at 7 a.m.
Well, that a girl. There you go. Pushing through the pain.
Yeah, no, I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here. We've been trying to arrange it for a while, and I'm just happy it's happened, but it's with the replacement, so I'm a little confused.
No. Come on.
No.
We don't look at you guys. We don't look at you guys as scab players. Okay. We're looking at you guys as call ups. You guys are being called up. It. Yeah. You called up to fill in because, with some, for some injuries. Okay. So let's go ahead and crack our first one here and get started. Today, news has been coming fast and furious lately. About Deshaun Watson and his situation down in Cleveland. Within the last few days here, within the last week or so, he has settled with 20 of his 24 current accusers. Undisclosed amounts. Lawyers came out and said that they didn't want to, discuss any of the terms or anything like that. But 20 of the 24 current suits against him are settled. And he will move on from those. So that leaves him with 4 active, and according to reports, several reports, possibly 2 more coming at least. But then yesterday, news breaking that the NFL is going to sit down with him on Tuesday, and they will go before Judge Sue L. Robinson, who has been termed the disciplinary officer by the NFL. And they are going to start discussing his terms of his punishment, whatever that punishment may be. Now, there's a report from Pro Football Network's Aaron Wilson that the NFLPA, the Players Association, the union, thinks that the NFL is going to be pushing for an indefinite suspension of at least 1 year. The thinking behind that, as far as I understand it, is that as long as Deshaun Watson stopped doing all of this 66 women for different massages and that, as long as all of that stopped when this first came out, when the news first broke of this, the relevant statutes of limitations would run up in March of next year. And not to be callous or, cold about it, but that's just the legal realities of things, is that the statute of limitations on anything for him, as long as he stopped this when news first broke of this last year, the statute of limitations would run out in March. And so if the league suspends him for a full season, that at least covers them from culpability or, PR standpoint. If anything else were to come out, that covers them until then. If anything else comes out after then, it's past the statute of limitations, legal jeopardy. There is none. And there are questions about why you're coming out now with it. However, now the NFLPA has an obligation to defend him. And so they will be pushing back against that. I know that we talked a little bit on last week's show about the possibility of the league pushing for a year and the disciplinary officer recommending 6 games so that they could meet in the middle at, say, 8, and the league would look good. Hey, look, we got more than what she recommended, and it wouldn't affect anything that way. It's going to be a big week. The talk is that we could hear something from this week, about what his status will be this year. Remember that they put his contract together, even though he averages $46 million a year over this fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract. His base salary this year is only just over $1 million. He's getting almost $45 million in signing bonus this year. And that was done specifically in the event that he was suspended this year. He would not have to lose out on a lot of money. So everybody's been expecting this from the beginning. But what do we think this says? If he ends up getting a full year, he already didn't play last year. That'll be 2 full seasons he's missed before he gets back on the field again. And he's never played for the Browns. He's in a new environment. He's with new players. What do we think this says for his fantasy value going forward, specifically his dynasty value? Jared, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, first off, the problem with Watson is that on top of all the landmines you laid out, he's a guy you have to take, even if you did this season by season, but in dynasty especially, if somebody was dumb enough to let him go, obviously, because he's obviously been on somebody's team. If you're just starting this year and for long term, it's definitely a waiver kind of, like, you don't take him as your primary guy as a quarterback, because unfortunately you don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. We've heard everything from a full season to, like you said, the bare minimum could be 6 games. But when it really comes down to it, we won't know what's happening until the exact suspension comes down. And even after that, there may be more lawsuits coming. We don't know what's happening. There was allegedly over 60-something women that were involved in this whole fiasco he's pulled. So now you're looking at it from the standpoint that possibly there could be more coming down the pipe, more coming out later. Even with statute of limitations expiring in March, this may just be the first season of this. The NFL might fight more. The NFL has already concluded their investigation, obviously, but it's just, if I'm in a dynasty league, I am just staying away. There's 25 other quarterbacks I could take. And on top of the fact is, me being a nerd and when it comes to film and strategy and everything else in football, getting to know a new offense in a first year is hard enough as it is, through OTAs, minicamp, everything else. But this man hasn't touched the football since the pandemic was in full swing. And now you're looking at the possibility that he may not play until week 8. And this is a new offense. You have Amari Cooper. Yeah, you have the running backs. But probably trying to deal Kareem Hunt now. So there's so much turnover in Cleveland, and there's so much uncertainty. And then you also have the fact that they are probably right now, if the season started today, they're finishing 3rd in their division. So I would stay away unless you had a shot at him in the 2nd or 3rd round for a dynasty, as a 2nd or 3rd shot at him as a quarterback. I mean, because in all honesty, you're literally staring on the fact that you could lose him for X amount of games or even a whole season, depending on what the NFL decides.
MJ, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I just kind of had some general commentary too that I wanted to add in it. I just think this whole situation kind of ranks up there with the Ray Rice assaulting his wife in the elevator. So he was suspended, kind of thrown out of the league. He was really released by the Ravens and was indefinitely suspended by the NFL. I think the gravity of the situation is much heavier with Watson. And just as for the NFL guidelines, they have violations involving assault, battery, domestic violence, or sexual assault will result in a baseline 6-game suspension without pay. A second offense will result in banishment from the NFL for at least 1 year. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, hasn't Watson actually committed some 60-ish offenses based on the number of women? And so a league official I read from the AP or told the AP that settling doesn't give someone a pass and indicated a lengthy suspension remains in order. I think he could very well get suspended for the whole year. We're not just talking of one case. We're talking 24 cases. I know that 20 were settled, but obviously there's misconduct if he had to settle. And if he had to settle, he's guilty of some misconduct with these massage therapists. 24 is significant. I think the NFL will make a statement out of this, and reports are indicating, like you said, that the NFL is pushing for an indefinite suspension lasting no less than 1 year under the league's personal conduct policy. And so, yeah, I'm not touching him in Dynasty. The shares that I have of him, I'm holding or trying to push or try to sell. But they've cracked down on domestic assaults or violence by players. There should be a zero tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. We're talking about guys that are superstars that kids idolize. A slap on the wrist with a slight suspension. What are we teaching the youth of the sport? Those are just kind of my general feedback on this whole situation that just kind of makes me sick, to be honest.
No, definitely. I think that, when you look at the whole situation, obviously from a legal standpoint, there were no charges filed, but from a public opinion standpoint, like you said, settling 20 of the 24 cases, especially when up to this point he had argued and said, I did nothing wrong. I will not settle. I'm going to take this all the way. His intention appeared to be, initially at least, to fight all of this and to clear his name. And he still is using that term, clear his name. But settling with 20 out of 24 from a PR standpoint, and the league is always about the image and the shield and protecting the shield. From an image standpoint, 20 out of 24, while not a legal admission of guilt, is definitely a red flag in the public's mind and the public's eye. And I think, like you kind of alluded to, MJ, where there's smoke, there must be fire, right? At the very least, he is guilty of some very sketchy behavior. And the league does not want sketchy behavior out front, especially from a superstar like Deshaun Watson. If he was the third string kick holder for, Arizona, nobody would be talking about this. But he's one of the premier marquee names in the league. Fantasy quarterback 6 last time he saw the field. And the face of any franchise he's on, because he's the quarterback and he's a star quarterback. Now I've seen things that say, the league is arguing for this year and that the Players Association will push back, saying that, well, we've had owners like Jerry Jones, like Kraft up in New England. We've had owners that have been, found under the league's policy, under the league's conduct policy, that have been found guilty, or however you want to term it, because we know it doesn't take a legal guilty plea to get punishment handed down from Roger Goodell. But that,
I want to see the hammer come down big time.
And I don't think you're alone on that. In fact, I think there's a lot of Browns fans that want to see the hammer come down. I know there are a lot of Browns fans that are not happy with them giving all this guaranteed money and basically rewarding Deshaun Watson for this situation. But the league arguing for 1 year, the Players Association is going to say, well, you didn't give a 1-year suspension or anything. You didn't hand out this kind of punishment to these owners. Why should the players have to face anything harsher than that? Let's see how well that serves them. I'm saying from a fantasy standpoint, I would say, obviously, you're not getting anything out of him in a redraft or 1-year situation this year.
No.
In a dynasty situation, because he has been so good and you can afford to hold on to him for a couple years, I'm not staying away from it. In fact, I brought it up last week on the show. I'm in a dispersal draft right now for a dynasty league, a 16-team dynasty league, 2 quarterbacks, super flex. I took Deshaun Watson with the number 1 pick because of who was available. I know I'm not getting anything out of him this year. I can afford to hang on to him for a couple of years. I did get Brady behind him. I've got a couple more guys coming. I've drafted Nick Foles and Nick Mullins just in case something happens to the starters there. And I'll be drafting some guys in the rookie draft. But I can afford to hang on to him for a while. In a 16-team league, and it's a super flex league where you can play 2 quarterbacks, having a guy with the possible skill set of Deshaun Watson was just too much to pass up. Now, if you're in a single quarterback league, dynasty league, I have no problem with you, like you said, MJ, either trying to push him on somebody else and get something back for him. You're probably getting...
It's low. It's super low.
Yes, you're going to have to give them a discount, which sucks. It means you're not getting back the capital that you put into him.
Right.
But if you can afford to hold him, I would hold him just in case. He does have weapons there in Cleveland. They are trying to put something together there. In a dynasty format, if you've got time to hang on to him, I would hang on to him. But from the standpoint of a redraft or a single quarterback league, you can not expect anything from him. Yeah, write him off for at least this season, if not more. I would be I would be surprised, which is a sad way to put it, but I would be surprised if we see anything more than a year come out of this, even as egregious as all this is, just because of how business works. We'll see. All right. So tied to the hip of the Deshaun Watson situation in Cleveland is obviously Cleveland's old starting quarterback in Baker Mayfield, who's only entering his 5th season. Baker Mayfield was starter in Cleveland. He has been a starter there since the week after he came into his first game, and has had a mixed bag of results. But the talk around Baker Mayfield is that the Browns are looking to trade him. They do not want to release him. He has a $18.9 million guaranteed contract for this season. From the Browns standpoint, it makes no sense financially or otherwise, football-wise or otherwise, to cut him and just swallow that entire $18.9 million. Like I said last week, if you can get a trade for him from anyone and they'll give you anything back, if they'll give you a case of hot dogs for the vending machines and that, take it, because whatever you can recoup in a trade for him lessens that $18.9 million financial burden that's guaranteed. Now, some reports came out here recently that they are still talking with the Carolina Panthers about a trade for him. And they have been willing to take on, as opposed to the past where they said they would not take on salary, possibly up to $10 million of that salary. So over half of that salary, the Browns would be willing to swallow maybe in order to move on from him. Which paying 8.9 is better than paying 18.9. But it has also been said that he is still open and he is still a possibility to go to the Seattle Seahawks. I guess there's mutual interest there that Mayfield would like and prefer to go to Seattle. In fact, that was one of the first places that came up in the media when he was first made available, or when the Watson trade happened and Mayfield was obviously expendable. And he has said that he has interest in going to Seattle. Now, Seattle this far has said that they are only interested in him as a free agent. They don't want to make a trade. Pete Carroll came out and said kind of a blanket statement that they don't see trading for a third quarterback. They have Geno Smith and Drew Lock who are competing for that right now. But if you look at their career stats between Mayfield, we'll go with Sam Darnold in Carolina because Matt Corral hasn't thrown a pass yet, and PJ Walker is a distant 4th stringer, I think, there. But if you look at Mayfield, Darnold, Locke, and Smith, Mayfield is, I think, inarguably the best of the 4 quarterbacks. He is the best. He is the best of the 4. He has the best stats of the 4. He's the most efficient of the 4. And I think he would give a football team in the NFL the best chance to win right now. Plus, he's only going into his 5th year. That's young for a quarterback. If he can hook on with the right team in the right offense, I think he still has something to offer this league. The question that we are looking at today is, what would Mayfield be worth to the Seahawks over, say, a Drew Lock or a Geno Smith? MJ, why don't you go ahead and start off with that?
Okay. Oh, wow. Well, watching Drew Lock play in Denver, he was good, but he wasn't great, especially when pressured. He had trouble getting rid of the ball, as we witnessed. He just held on too long. I'm familiar with that. Sometimes I ruminate and I hold on to things too long, but he held on to the ball too long, and it's just dangerous. He wasn't as productive as we would have hoped for. But I think Baker Mayfield is a vast improvement over Drew Lock. I'd even wager to say that he's worth 10 more wins than Drew Lock could produce.
Whoa.
I mean, Mayfield had the worst fantasy season of his NFL career last season while attempting to play with that torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. Mm-hmm. But before the 2021 season, he had finished as a QB2 in 3 consecutive seasons, honestly making him a viable option in Superflex leagues. Reports indicate that no deal to acquire Mayfield is imminent, but it wouldn't be surprising if he was dealt to a new team before training camp. He may be the starting QB if Watson gets suspended for a full year. So I'm just watching this, and to see Baker Mayfield under center in the Cleveland Browns again would be a surprise after this offseason that we've had, but that's what the situation may force. So that's sort of my feedback on it.
Okay. Jared, what do you think about this whole disaster?
So it's weird, right? So I'm actually a Drew Lock defender, and it's only for a few reasons. Denver's offense over the past, I think, 3-4 years he's been in the league has been a very mid-level passing to short passing game, not a lot of vertical attacking. And if you don't forget, Drew Lock's offense in college when he was a top recruit was a vertical passing attack. Mm-hmm. In Seattle, he is given DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, two of the better deep threats in the league, and his boy Noah Fant, who went with him.
Yes.
I think, honestly, Locke will actually give the Seahawks a couple wins. They're not going to win a lot of games, obviously, because they're the worst team in that division by a mile, but they're going to catch a couple teams. I think, honestly, though, with Locke, I think Pete Carroll, unless the price tag is really low, I don't think he'll take a swing at a new quarterback in training camp, right, where he's going to try to see if he can get Drew Lock to buy into his offense. Also, you tell Drew Lock, hey, just hand the ball off to one of our 8 running backs 12 times a game and then throw a couple deep balls. You'd be happy.
They do have 8,000 running backs.
Three of them are from my college. Trust me, I know. They got like 4 Miami guys in that roster. When it comes to Carolina, so in our pre-draft coverage for the corner booth and for Dan's show, and when I brought on my man Uke when we were talking about it, I was a big Matt Corral defender. I said this kid has the highest ceiling out of all these quarterbacks because he is just an absolute cannon. He's what we thought Baker was going to be with more athleticism and a better arm. My biggest thing about Matt Corral in Carolina is I wouldn't be surprised if he beats out Sam Darnold by week 3. It's the fact that Sam Darnold is obviously one of my co-hosts is a Jets fan, so I've heard everything in the book about Sam Darnold too.
I'm so sorry you're a Jets fan.
I'm an Eagles fan. My co-host is a Jets fan. I'm an Eagles fan.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's slightly.
That's worse.
I mean, last time I checked, my team's won a Super Bowl in the last 6 years, but it's okay.
I'm not one to defend what the Packers have been doing, so you won't offend me.
It's okay. No, I got nothing wrong with the Packers. I love your quarterback. He's hysterical on McAfee. My biggest thing is that with either situation, neither of them is ideal. My ideal situation for Baker was Houston. Like,
and he didn't want to go there.
Yeah, I know he didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
It's what cracked me up. I said to myself, and I'm like, this kid is staring down the career revival he's always needed. With a coach like Lovie Smith, who is literally the definition of stay calm, stay the course, muscle through.
Very even-keeled.
By the way, that Texans defense is going to finish top 15 this year. Nobody's going to understand why. I'm going to tell you because Lovie Smith is a rocket scientist with defense. Yep. But back to Carolina, they still have McAdoofus as an OC. And I don't like the problem is neither situation feels ideal for Baker. So it's going to be either that or some third team is going to have a quarterback get hurt in training camp
and jump in. Yeah,
it's a Sam Bradford, Minnesota like thing I see.
And might that be the best case scenario for Cleveland?
Oh yeah,
if some other team gets desperate because now, by appearances, Carolina and Seattle are not desperate. Now, obviously, Mayfield is an upgrade over what they have in-house, I think. I understand your points about Drew Lock, and yes, I think Drew Lock is an NFL caliber quarterback. I don't think he wins you as many games as Baker Mayfield when they're both on top of their game. But if a third team came into this, say somebody goes down in training camp and they feel they have, aspirations of competing, Mayfield I think he's a top 32 quarterback in this league. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that there are many, I don't think there are a ton of backups in this league who can say that. Their backups.
I'd say there's about 3. So
right?
3 backups.
Right.
Yeah. One of them plays for my team, obviously, Mr. Mustache Minshew, but
there you go.
And we have Tyler Huntley. He's a pretty great backup.
And then I'd probably throw in what's his face? Oh my god.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's killing me because I know exactly what I'm thinking of right now. I just can't put the name on the face right now or the team. I know there's one more. I'm going to say it halfway through, like during a commercial break, and be like,
and then we're going to be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, who the hell? No, I think Mayfield's one of the top 32. So I think a team that lost their quarterback who felt they were in contention, it might be worth a swing for them. if you're one of those teams that's going to finish bottom 2 or 3, bottom 2 in your division, let alone trying to fight for the playoffs in your conference. If you're not in that situation, it doesn't make any sense to go out and give up assets for Baker Mayfield, especially since there aren't a lot of quarterback openings in the league right now, to be dead honest with you. A lot of teams think they have their guy, either because he's been there and established or because they've got a young guy in the last couple of years. But I think if somebody lost one, that might be the best case scenario for Baker in terms of catching on somewhere and having a chance to start right away. I think if he went to Seattle, I think he would be their starter. I think he would take that on. I think if he goes to Carolina, I think he would be their starter. Keep in mind here too, the Browns didn't have, when I look at what he might be worth to the Seahawks, Mayfield, in terms of, fantasy stats, he was starter there for 4 years. Now, last year obviously was a lost cause. He was hurt. Like we said, he didn't play well. But if you look at his the 3 years before that, 2018, Jarvis Landry was his top receiver, and he finished as wide receiver 22. Okay, which is a starter. That's a wide receiver 2 type. Obviously 24 starters in a 2 receiver 12 team league. 2019, Landry was the wide receiver 14, and that was Odell Beckham's year there, where he was wide receiver 31. Last year, 2020. Beckham was hurt. It was not a great year, but he can sustain. He can give guys targets. That 2019 year, Landry and Beckham, I think, both had over 130 targets from him. Nobody else had a whole lot, but they didn't have a whole lot else to throw to be dead honest with you. You give Baker Mayfield, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, and you give both of those guys 130 some targets, you're going to get some points. Mayfield is more accurate than any of the other quarterbacks they have on their roster. Smith and Locke are both below 60% for their careers. And I think that, if you take a look at things last year, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were wide receiver 10 and 11 with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is about a 65% passer on his career. Mayfield is about a 61.5%. Not quite 62%. So you've got a bit of a downgrade there in terms of efficiency, in terms of how many times he's going to hit your receiver. But these are the 2 best receivers he has. If you take 5% or so of their production away because of the 4 or 5% drop in accuracy, they still are going to be wide receiver 12 and 13 on the year. Okay. I just think that, from the standpoint of a team like Seattle, who appears to be going into not a full teardown rebuild, they feel like they want to be one of those soft rebuild or competitive while we rebuild teams. Mayfield is still young. You've got Locke, who is still young. I don't see why you wouldn't try to take a jump on him. From Carolina's standpoint, Darnold is not, he's same draft as Baker Mayfield. You've got him. Now you've got Corral, who's in there. PJ Walker is not old. He's only going into about his 3rd year in the league. You've got a young stable there where if I was Carolina, I would hold. Now they're playing for their jobs and they're coaching for their jobs. But I think there's real value to be had there for Mayfield, for Seattle, if they feel like pulling the trigger. The question is, can they come to some kind of agreement? I mean, do you disagree with that, Jared, at all? I think he's more valuable to Seattle than he is to Carolina. Carolina isn't going anywhere anyway.
I think so as well. I think Seattle will be the ideal position, at least out of the 2. Like I said before, the real issue is Seattle. Do they want to take on the 8 or 9 or 10 million plus, like giving up something? If Locke's even close to what Mayfield could be, let's say Locke has a great camp, is it really worth it at that point? Because as much as I like, if Baker is a top 32 starter, but he's in the high 20s right now, he's got to come. Right. I'm never the biggest Baker defender because Baker is most efficient when he's handing the ball off to a running back 15 times a quarter, and then chucking 1 or 2 balls over the top and hitting his tight end or his receivers or whatever. I'm not saying Baker's a bad quarterback. I'm saying he's more on the bottom end of the spectrum, whereas Drew Lock has the potential to get to that. And it's up to Seattle, really, if they really want to go out and make the move and spend the money when they're going to have to pay DK Metcalf in a year. They're still taking on that behemoth of a Titanic contract that they gave Jamal Adams. So it really comes down to me. It's like, do you want to take it out of the soft rebuild? Do you want to just see if Locke's got it for a season? And who knows? Baker's there in next year in free agency. Oh boy, there you go. Now you go get him. See, for me, with the problem with the Baker Mayfield thing is now is like both teams you mentioned, neither team's going to be, even if they're soft competitive, will be competitive enough where it's going to be an issue. Baker to Carolina makes them a 9-8 team tomorrow. If McCaffrey stays healthy with that offensive weaponry,
but that does not get you to the playoffs.
Oh no, but I mean in that dumpster fire of a division, because you're going to tell me
they would be instantly better than Atlanta, and I think they'd be better than New Orleans.
I think with New Orleans,
they would have a chance to be better than New Orleans.
New Orleans is going to be either a 12-win team or a 7-win team. It's going to be somewhere in that stretch. They are literally the ultimate wild card right now.
Right,
trying to figure out their schedule. Now they lost Kamara for possibly 6 games. They're looking at it like Carolina. See, this is why it's weird to me, because I don't know which way to go with this question. I don't know which is worse or which is better at this point. I guess Carolina, honestly, if we're really going to swing it that way, because I think Carolina, because unless Matt Corral is like the next Dak Prescott, it's not really going to matter.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I think that, for their careers, I mean, who was the better team last year? MJ, who was the better team last year? The Browns or the Broncos?
And well, I might have a little bit of a a bias. I think the Denver Broncos were better last year.
Okay. I will just say that Drew Lock in 21 games as a starter is 8-13. Baker Mayfield in 59 games as a starter is 29-30. He's basically a 500 quarterback, and that's with last year's debacle. And that's with the Browns. I just keep coming back to that. He's with Cleveland. The man won a playoff game in Cleveland, for crying out loud, against the Steelers. And also, if you want to look at, like, say, their from efficiency standpoint, I've talked about their passing efficiency percentages, but touchdown interception ratios too. Of the 4 quarterbacks, Mayfield, Darnold, Locke, and Smith, Mayfield is by far the best. He's got about a 1.64, 1.65 or so touchdown interception. He's got 92 touchdowns in his career to 56 interceptions. Darnold is just over 1-to-1. He's got 54 touchdowns, 52 interceptions in his career. Locke is he's dead on 1.25 for his career. And Geno Smith is under 1 touchdown per interception. He's thrown more interceptions in his career than he has touchdowns. And now, granted, he spent a lot of his time as a starter with the New York Jets. Sorry to your co-host, but I don't think it's a question. Mayfield is worth quite a bit. I don't know if he's worth 10 wins, MJ. I'm not going to go that far. I don't know if he's worth 10 more wins than who they've got in-house, but I think that he would give them the best chance. And I think if they could sign him to an extension going forward, I think he would be good for them going forward because, like you said, Jared, he does not have to throw. He can throw. He can turn around and hand it off to one of the 96 running backs they've got stacked up behind him in the backfield. And occasionally he can throw to one of the best 2 receiver sets in the entire game between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I think that's going to wrap it up for that discussion. Let's move on. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from our top sponsors, and that's always fun. And after that, we'll come back and we'll talk about some quarterback situation down south. All right?
Sweaty sack summer is approaching, and it's time for you to prioritize the comfort of your crotch. That's why the kings of crotch comfort, Manscaped, have spent 2 years designing the most comfortable boxer briefs out there. I've had the honor of testing out these new boxers, and I can say it's the softest fabric of any underwear. So breathable that it's like gills for your groin. They even trademarked the jewel pouch, so you know it's serious. I think it's time you invest in your family jewels, so let your bulge breathe and get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at Manscaped.com. Let's say you're on a date and your partner catches that Manscaped on the waistband of your underwear. It's almost guaranteed to raise some eyebrows and act like a billboard on the highway to Pleasure Town. This is thanks to the Lawnmower 4.0, the best electric trimmer for below-the-waist grooming. This trimmer offers skin-safe technology designed to trim hair on loose skin. Outside of just ball trimming, they're now focusing their efforts on helping out your thigh slappers in other ways with game-changing boxers. These boxer features include the Jewel Pouch, a pouch designed to cradle your boys in their own special space, lined with perforated performance fabric and keep them well ventilated. Basically, just imagine your balls sipping pina coladas, chilling on a hammock on some tropical beach. Get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BellyUpFantasy at Manscaped.com. One more time. That's promo code BellyUpFantasy to get 20% off and free shipping. Once the Boxers 2.0 touch your sack, you'll never go back. Sweaty.
There it is. All right.
I love
best
that.
Sponsor out there, the best logo, and the best trimmer in the men's grooming business. There it is.
Yeah,
right
you guys
there.
look good. I can tell that you used it, Chase.
Well, let's see. All right. Now, moving on here. Let's turn our attention south. We just talked about a little bit about the NFC South. We brought up the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. And one team that is thrilled to have the Panthers in their division is the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons finished third last year in the NFC South, and they're very happy to do that again because they are probably not going to be beating the Saints or the Buccaneers anytime soon. But they drafted themselves a new quarterback this year. They have moved on from longtime franchise stalwart Matt Ryan, who is now up in Indianapolis, making those fans happy. And they brought in Marcus Mariota, and we've seen Marcus Mariota in the past. And Marcus Mariota is a relevant quarterback, I'd say.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, there you have it. But he's no longer a backup. He is, as of right now, he is number one on the depth chart there. So they bring in Marcus Mariota, and we've seen Marcus Mariota be a viable starter in the past. He was a good backup in Las Vegas and for them. But they bring in Desmond Ridder. And now we all know, we've all heard all of the old adages of if you don't draft the quarterback in the first round, chances are the guy's a flop and all of that. And then Tom Brady pokes his head up from, way back in the 200s and says, hey, no, I can do it. But taking Desmond Ridder, and they didn't take him in the first round. He wasn't a first round quarterback. There weren't a whole lot of first round quarterback grades on anybody this year, to be dead honest with you. But he has looked good so far, they say, in preseason activities, to the point where he may be pushing Mariota for that starting position earlier than I think anybody thought that he would. And the question here then is, if Desmond Ridder takes hold of that starting position in Atlanta, the question we were looking at is, can he take Kyle Pitts, one of last year's draft phenoms that everybody was excited to see? Can he take Kyle Pitts to the next level? Pitts took a while to warm up, I think, last year, but he ended the year as the tight end 9. He still was a top 10 tight end. We typically see tight ends not really perform all that well early, and they take a year or two to ramp up. Tight ends don't normally produce in their first year, and Kyle Pitts did. He caught on, and he produced, and he was tight end 9 despite only scoring 1 touchdown all season. The question there then that we'll start off with anyway is, can Desmond Ridder, if he takes hold of that position, can he take Kyle Pitts to the next level? Jared, what's your thoughts on that?
So I am a big fan of Desmond Ridder's. I like everything he does from start to finish. He's the consummate guy who literally just did nothing but win in college. I think he's the most winning D1 quarterback of all time, or close to it. And at Cincinnati, he was the reason they won their games. Of course, they had guys like Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant as lockdown corners. But Ridder on that offense, just no moment was too big. He stepped in, made the throws. Even against Alabama, they were just getting not as badly throttled as Michigan was to Georgia, but they were still getting their butt kicked a little bit. Ridder stayed in the pocket, made good throws. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of the offense they ran in Cincinnati. I felt like it restricted his skill set a lot. But with Ritter, he does everything right. His anticipation's on time. His reads are good. He never makes the wrong throw. And he does have the physical traits running what I believe was a sub 4, 5, sub
4 or something.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous. And then he's also 6'4", has a decent arm, if not good arm. And he just knows how to win games, and he's not afraid of big moments. If I'm Atlanta, I'm like, okay, we may have just drafted like Dak 2.0, but actually knows how to play in the playoffs. If I'm Atlanta, I'm jumping. If I'm Marcus Mariota, I'm seeing which team needs a trade partner in mid-training camp.
Really?
Well, I mean, my thing, I think Desmond Ritter might be the first starter to go. I think Malik Willis might be week 7 or 8 because Tannehill is going to cause Mike Vrabel to rip his hair out, but that's a whole other issue. But yeah, no, I'm a big Desmond Ritter fan. I really think he is going to be a solid quarterback.
So if you're shipping Marcus Mariota out, you believe in Felipe Franks as your number 2, or do you have to go? Do they now?
I think I keep Mariota for this year because one, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan. Felipe Franks is garbage. Just like his Tampa Bay counterpart, Kyle Trash. I will say this.
Shots
I'm not
fired.
Florida quarterbacks are literal dumpsters, but my biggest thing with that depth chart is I would not trust Felipe Franks to do anything but hold a clipboard. So even that, it's kind of risky. I really think they won't get rid of Mariota. Obviously, he might ask for a trade. He may not. He sat behind Derek Carr for 2 years, was a good backup, and honestly, with Mariota, I feel like he's not the type of guy who's going to make a stink about this. You saw it when he was in Tennessee. He was just a good teammate behind Tannehill when Tannehill beat him out in 2019. So I think really, as much as I joke, he might be looking for a new destination. I think unless some team comes knocking, he might be like, I will happily take my $3 to $5 million a year to sit and hold the clipboard.
Marcus Mariota is one of those rare players and honestly, you could say this for Geno Smith up in Seattle as well, who was a starter early in their career, had success. I mean, we're not bad quarterbacks necessarily, but they were the starter, they were the guy, and they have accepted, kind of like Joe Flacco as well. They've accepted the idea that
Flacco had to have some coaxing.
Well, yes, but he has now accepted this idea that, hey, I can still be valuable as a backup in this league, and there's value in that for me and for the team. Mariota seems like that kind of guy. I mean, he seemed like he was really good in his role in Las Vegas, and I agree with you. And like you said before, in Tennessee when Tannehill came in, I don't think that he would cause necessarily a big ruckus if Ritter was to beat him out this year. Now, from the standpoint of their development in Atlanta, you've got a ton of young guys there now. You've got Drake London. You've got Kyle Pitts. You've got Tyler Allgeier that they just drafted who can take over their backfield when Cordero Patterson inevitably hits the Cordero Patterson wall that's going to happen at 31. They can grow together, but you're not going to be competitive this year. You're just not. They just don't have the guns yet for that. They don't have the offensive line for it. They just don't have enough. I would keep Mariota as a transition quarterback, and I would let Desmond Ritter learn. There are worse guys to learn behind. And as a running mobile quarterback, there are worse guys to learn behind than Marcus Mariota. Let him develop for a year. Let him keep working with guys and practicing that. Don't necessarily throw him to the wolves yet. If you get games, you get opportunities to put him in this year, do it. But I would keep the starting burden on Mariota and let Ritter develop. MJ, what do you think of this whole thing? What do you think of the Ritter versus Mariota question first off, and then we can take it back to Kyle Pitts.
Well, first, I do have to comment that I misspoke earlier. I think the Browns had a better season than the Broncos, but I got caught in the BR. I got the wrong word out. I'm sorry about the morning. I'm running on so little sleep. But now, so the question is, can Ritter get Pitts to the next level if he starts? I definitely think so. As the next pro-ready quarterback in the class behind Kenny Pickett alone, I wouldn't rule out the third-round rookie out of Cincinnati from earning the starting job over Mariota. I mean, the speedy wideout offers juice with his legs, having rushed for over 2,700 yards during his 4-year career, 58 per game. his athleticism was also at the forefront of his testing at the NFL Combine. And from what I've been reading and reports out of camp, they're impressed with his skill set in throwing the ball and footwork. And if Mariota falters in any way, he could easily supplant Mariota and take over and immediately increase the value of players around him, depending on his performance under center. He ran a lot of read option plays in college. So basically he was using his feet if necessary to gain the yardage if no one was open. I think if we're talking about, I think he should be drafted and stashed in all 2 QB and Superflex formats. But as far as his dynasty outlook, the good news is that Ritter figures to get a chance to play as soon as 2022. The bad news is that his round 3 draft capital will not preclude the Falcons from spending a first-round pick on a quarterback next year if they so choose. So I would say he's a mid to late third-round pick in dynasty rookie drafts.
There you go. All right. Yeah. When I look at it, I think I guess it depends on what the Atlanta coaching staff and how they feel about things. When you have nothing to lose by playing either guy, do you feel like you need to develop the second guy, or do you feel like it's not going to matter to throw him in there? My worst case scenario for Desmond Ritter, because they're not a good team, is that they throw him in there and he gets absolutely destroyed, like the Browns did to Deshaun Kaiser. Now, Kaiser probably wasn't ready to be drafted anyway when they took him, but what you don't want to see is a guy come into the league and then struggle so bad on a bad team his first year that it messes him up for the rest of his career. But Desmond Ritter, like you said, Jared, Desmond Ritter took an AAC team to playoff relevancy in the NCAA. Like that is not to be overlooked. He's a 62% passer. He's got a over 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio in college. I mean, the guy's he's got it, and he's a great runner, and he's a great passer. He's a good passer. He's a great runner, good passer, and he seems to be a leader, like you said. I mean, he was a starter for 4 years.
They keep talking about his intellectual capabilities.
Right. If we want to take this back to Kyle Pitts here, to get this back to the original question, I'm not sure what the next level for Kyle Pitts is supposed to be. I mean, he was already tight end 9 with no touchdowns. If he scores 5 touchdowns last year, and 5 touchdowns is not a crazy stat for a tight end, for a starting tight end in the NFL. If Kyle Pitts even scores 5 touchdowns instead of 1 last year, he's tight end 3 on the year, behind only the big 2 of Kelsey and Mark Andrews.
Right.
I'm not sure there's another level necessarily for him to get to, but if there is, holy cow, let me see it. But if you want to look back at their careers, I don't think that it matters which guy is at quarterback for Kyle Pitts to be successful this year. Marcus Mariota, remember, was Delaney Walker's quarterback in 2015, 16, 17. Delaney Walker was a top 5, top 10 type tight end for a good stretch there with Mariota as his quarterback. Mariota likes good tight ends who are athletic and can catch the football, and Kyle Pitts is athletic and can catch the football. If you're talking Delaney Walker as a tight end 4 or 5, Kyle Pitts, I think, is better than Delaney Walker is. There's no reason that Mariota as a quarterback can't push Pitts up to that top 3 level that people are expecting from him and were expecting from him when he was taken, in the top 10 overall. But again, if you look back now at Desmond Ritter and what he did in college, his first year as a starter, they had a real good receiver who caught like 19 touchdowns and was the man for their team. But otherwise, his other 3 years as a starter, his tight end was always his number one, his top target, especially for touchdowns and in the red zone. Desmond Ritter will look for, and some of that's on scheme, but Desmond Ritter will look for a good tight end in the red zone. He will look for a good tight end and he will throw to a good tight end. Josh Wiley was basically the number 1 receiver for the Alec Pierce aside. Josh Wiley was the number 1 receiving player for the Cincinnati Bearcats the last couple of years. And before that, he had Josiah DeGuara, who is now with the Packers and is probably their main pass catching tight end with Robert Tonyan out. So I don't think it matters necessarily which guy is under center. I think Kyle Pitts is stoked for a good year anyway, because if he just has any kind of positive regression to the mean in terms of touchdowns, he's a top 5 tight end by default. What's your thoughts on that one, Jared?
I'm sorry, you guys were talking at the same time. What'd you say?
Sorry, I just said, if there's any positive regression to the mean touchdown wise, Kyle Pitts is already a top 5 tight end, no matter who's under center. I don't think it matters who's under center, but
I think Kyle Pitts is one of the scariest offensive players I've ever seen on tape.
Right.
It's like watching, if it's what I thought Kelvin Benjamin was going to be, but as a tight end, so he's already in the right position, but Pitts is actually in shape. And what scares me about Kyle Pitts is it looks like LeBron on a fast break when he's running down the field. It looks not even fair. He's outrunning safeties and linebackers, and he's running with corners, and you're just like, what in the sweet hell am I supposed to do to cover this? We just saw Rob Gronkowski retire, and we thought he was the most imposing tight end. Last year in the draft, there was a whole thing about Philly was trading up for Pitts. Philly was going for Pitts, and I'm like, okay, once in a generation freak athlete type. So even if he only just catches, like last year with Pitts, he was so good with so little.
Right.
If either quarterback throws him half as many balls as he does, if he catches a touchdown on American soil, like holy smokes, like this kid might be like a top 5. This kid might be up there with Andrews and Kelsey by the end of the season.
Right. No, and he should be. Like I said, any kind of normal touchdown haul for him last year puts him at tight end number 3 with no question. And if he has more than that, now he's challenging Kelsey for that number 2 position last year. I agree
got a
with
whole
you.
theory about Kelsey, about his value dropping without Tyreek Hill in the lineup.
I agree with you in terms of Pitts's, he's got scary ability. Like I said, I don't think it matters who's underneath center for him. And I think also with the debacle that was the receiving core for them last year, and Calvin Ridley and Willie Won't-y, and now we know he won't for this year at least, but he's got Drake London across from him. Drake London is not a terrible target either, and that should help things. I would like to be able hey, if I'm Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder, I'm feeling pretty good about being able to throw to Drake London and Kyle Pitts, put either one of them to the corner of the end zone and let me pick which side I feel like tossing to.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have to worry about who's under center. I think Kyle Pitts is a safe bet, especially in Dynasty. He's young. Tight ends and receivers can last forever. Jump on that. All right, let's move on to our last topic here that we were going to look at for just a few minutes here before we have to wrap things up. But Allen Robinson heading to Los Angeles. And Allen Robinson languished for a few years in Chicago, like most people do, unfortunately. From a player standpoint, I love the city. I've been there. I don't want to hear it, Chicago fans. I love Chicago, the city. I'm just not a Bear fan, and there's reasons for that. He languished there. He didn't have anybody throwing to him. He had a rough time from a fantasy standpoint. Now, Allen Robinson going to Los Angeles. Does he still have dynasty value in particular, but fantasy value in general, heading out to Los Angeles? MJ, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, actually, I just wanted to point out, are you wearing a Bart Starr jersey?
I am wearing a Bart Starr jersey. I figured Bart Starr, I know Bart Starr isn't going to go, play for some other team. He's a Packer. He's a Packer for life.
He is. I love your jersey. I love it.
Thank you very much.
So, I mean, I have quite a bit to say, and I'll try to be as concise as possible, but I'm an Allen Robinson believer. So he was arguably, we have to face it, the fantasy football disappointment of 2021.
Yep.
Short of a season-ending injury, Robinson's 2021 season fits the bill of a nightmare for all fantasy managers who drafted him as their wide receiver 2, maybe even their wide receiver 1. And the worst part of all this is Robinson's horrible year wasn't even entirely his fault. Whether it was quarterback issues or offensive environment or Robinson's role, he was only targeted 5.5 times a game. It's hard to put all the blame on Robinson himself. He had just turned 28 years old a month before the season, and we had seen Robinson's talent outplay bad situations before. Unfortunately for fantasy managers invested in Robinson's services last season, the Bears of 2021 was one situation even A-Rob couldn't outplay. Robinson in 12 games last year, I mean, just posted just 66 targets, 38 receptions, 410 yards, and 1 touchdown. And those were all career lows for him, excluding the season when he went out with a torn ACL. But the assumption in early drafts was that he is washed. And as he was going off the board as a wide receiver 4, sometimes even later. I think we can all agree, though, that we wanted Robinson on a good team with a good quarterback. So I just have a few more things to say. So first, the Rams clearly believe in Robinson's talent after the contract they gave him in free agency. They have also not brought in any other receivers, whether that be in free agency or the draft. Robinson will also be playing with the best QB of his career. I know you're tired of hearing that when it comes to Robinson, but it's undeniably true. His other quarterbacks have included Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, and Nick Foles, and the duo of Dalton and Fields last year. Stafford last year threw for over 4,800 yards and 41 touchdowns with a 6.8% touchdown rate. Naturally, there will be more production to go around with the Rams than the Bears. And just a last thing to finish up. Actually, I have a little bit more to say. I should let someone else speak if it.
Well, Jared, what's your thoughts on Allen Robinson and dynasty value going forward in fantasy here, being in Los Angeles?
So I've watched Allen Robinson butcher my team twice. Once with the Jaguars, I think it was his rookie year. Him and Allen Hearns, or maybe it was
yes,
one. Yeah, they were
Allen
just butchering the Eagles secondary. But then I also remember the double doink game. Everyone just remembers Cody Parkey's kick. People don't forget Allen Robinson single-handedly marched that team down the field with like 6 catches and a touchdown.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there watching it hopelessly, watching Ronald Darby get smoked by him.
He's a good player.
Allen Robinson is a freak of nature receiver. He's a great player. He's very well-rounded. He's got all the skills you need. His problem was that he literally was in the worst offensive team in the league. I do not blame Allen Robinson at all for last year because, to be honest, I'm not the biggest Justin Fields defender. I honestly don't think he's going to be just in the league. Andy Dalton, the red pea shooter, I don't think he's literally terrible. I watched the Dallas Cowboys O-line give up on a play and watch him get smoked. So, with all this in mind, with Allen Robinson, he now is going to probably the most team of like all of these mismatched mercenary pieces, a couple homegrown guys, and they just won a Super Bowl. They're not going to win the Super Bowl again this year because repeating himself is just impossible, but he is going to have a good, solid season. He's not going to be a receiver 1 that is Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson's a good number 2 guy, and Odell won't be back until November if he signs with them. At least early season, Allen Robinson's a great touch.
Can I just point out that we routinely saw that both Kupp and Robert Woods finished as top 20 options with the Rams. In fact, Woods has finished top 20 in fantasy points per game in each of the last 5 years. Kupp has done so in 3 of the last 4 seasons. There's no reason There's no reason the top 2 Rams receivers can't both continue to finish in the top 20, especially considering who they have as a much better QB now.
And that's my point. Yeah, I think that, when you look at it, Kupp is the best receiving partner that Robinson's had in his career. No offense to Allen Hearns and Marquise Lee and Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney, but Cooper Kupp is the best guy that's lined up across the formation from Allen Robinson in his career. Allen Robinson, I mean, remember, he scored 224 points in a fantasy season. He had 80 catches for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns one season. Ooh. And like you said, that was without Matthew Stafford and without Cooper Kupp across the formation from him. If you think Robert Woods is a good fantasy receiver, and I think he is, how can you not look at Allen Robinson taking his role in this offense 2 years younger than Robert Woods and think anything but fantasy gold here? I think that Robinson is their number 2. I think Jefferson is their number 3. I think Jefferson is a good number 3. But I think Allen Robinson, he's only 28. I think in Dynasty at a receiver position, and like you said, coming off of last year, coming off of some injury in the past few years, he's kind of low on the radar. You can get Allen Robinson probably for a discount. I say jump on him.
Oh, I've been jumping.
Well, good. That's going to do it for us today on Belly Up Fantasy Live for this week for the Dynasty edition. Let's check out real quick. MJ, where can people find you and where can we follow you more here?
I'm formerly a Fantasy Six Pack, so I have about 10 articles on there. But I'm now currently writing, and I'll have a podcast coming out with Yards for Fantasy. I'll be co-hosting the podcast. We'll be starting in September, but you can also find my work on dynastynerds.com and on all the Twitter feeds. So, and if you just follow me, I forgot the little cute @ sign, but it's @empowered FF. So you get it, empowered, because I'm empowered. Yes.
She's a good follow, people. I'm on there with her. So, all right, Jared, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me and the rest of my motley crew of human beings at the Corner Booth Pod. We do our Tuesday show. We talk a lot more sports, a lot more serious, a lot more strategy, everything else involved with pro football, college ball, MLB, some basketball, a little gambling here and there. And then our Thursday show is live here on Belly Up Sports and Belly Up Sports TV and Belly Up Media. It's the Corner Booth pregame. It's kind of like your weekend pregame show. So, drinking, talking about stupid things, drinking game, anything you can imagine would happen if 4 sports guys walked into a bar and had a private room. So, that's basically where you find me. You can find me at Belly Up Jared and also at Corner Booth Pod.
Excellent. All right. And as always, you can find me at STTChaseFFB on Twitter, and you can find me on BellyUpFantasySports.com. Giving my takes on, on the fantasy bent for everything NFL. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Jared, thanks for coming, taking the corner booth at the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. And we'll hopefully talk to both of you again, and we will see all of you next week. We're
Cheers.
out.